Hello, the one on the other side of the screen. Today I shall be telling you the story's backstory of the EXES. Chapter 1. Rewrite. The tale in the 90s, an exploiter priest decided to create something to deceive people at a time, and get easy money on top of it. The priesthood popular church created a fake computer program that supposed will allow people to communicate with Christ. The lack of information and the need to manipulate a fake store at the time contributed to the idea being bought. Lots of copies of said program, which was false, were sold by the church. Short afterwards, some accidents occurred reporting the death of people who supposed were influenced by the software to take their own lives. The repercussion was loud, but the scarcity of evidence meant that it was not possible to arrest the priest immediately. So, an investigation began. Meanwhile, the priest decides to test the misleading program he commissioned, to somehow understand how that could be happening. After sending the first message, he was privately answered by someone on the other side, which in a disturbing way started to talk about life and about how the priest used something sacred to manipulate people. When the priest questions the entity, "Who are you?" it just answers, "I am God." The priest is found dead short after the incident. Accidental set fire to his own house and his body. Copies of said software were confiscated by the authorities, but some remain circulating around to this day. One of those copies falls into the hand of a certain person, who is going to the protagonist of the store. It's through their eyes that we will see the events of this rewrite. 138. That's the number of times the game has been replayed, and possibly the amount of victims the game has made to this point. The game now takes the shape of 3D experience similar to a Saturn game, where you play as Sonic, who came back after defeating Dr. Robotnik once again, and is ready to reunite with your friends to play games and have a good time. It's like a party game, where you meet the characters in a 3D environment to play games from childhood, like tag, hide and seek, etc. But, as you would expect, things start to go south when the player himself ends up killing Sonic's friends, and the game seems to react to his actions bizarrely accurate. Sonic starts going more and more unstable as the game progresses, taking actions for the player and inducing him to do things his way, lurking into the protagonist's mind with the intention to claim his soul. The red rings rewrite wears in his body are the in-game representation of his victim's souls. He collects one after killing each of his friends, Tails, Knuckles and Robotnik. That's how you advance in the game, but those three aren't the only souls trapped inside this thing. As mentioned, this is rewrite number 138. Every time the game is booted, it's a new torture session for the souls trapped in this hellish dimension. It can come in a variety of forms, and happen in many ways depending on who is playing. It doesn't even have to be a Sonic game. Chapter 2. Lord X. The tale, this is subject to change due to Lord X maybe becoming a continuation of Sonic.exe's real story. X was created in the void after immense high, cataclysmic amounts of energy redacted, causing a large amount of antimatter to appear and become sentient. It is not known how long he existed before finding Earth, but ever since then, he has been around for 10 years. Lord X has a deep fascination with the Sonic the Hedgehog series, molding its vessel and world around the character and franchise. Lord X prefers the earlier years of the series, but is not afraid to dwell into the modern state of the property. It is not known why it chose Sonic, or the reason it has a fondness for the character. In the start of the PC port game, he would be holding Tails with his hands, as the game would start. When Tails comes to the bridge, he will crash the game to say hello and restart as a whole. It would restart to the green kill zone, but with dead animals and destroyed robots, with some of animals being skinned alive. Tails would walk until a black screen shows saying, "Welcome back." As he laughs, as green kill turns into dark yellow and an image of Lord X saying, "I am God." As Tails walks he finds Sonic and waves at him. Tails gets close to X and then he twists his head says, "Remember this." The level would change to what looks like Angel Island on fire from the 2012 Sonic.exe game. Tails runs around the zone and then Lord X chases up to him. Tails, scared, ran as fast as he could from X. He then attempts to fly away, only for his tail to be eaten by a tree, and now has to resort to running away from Lord X from now on. He soon trips and cries and music would play as Lord X got closer, only for the former to pass incomplete. Tails would then run the other way, only to blocked off by a giant wall that suddenly appeared. Lord X idle found him and grabbed him by the neck, opens his mouth and pulls him in, only for the game to crash. As you reopen the game seems normal until he turns into his true form and crashes or lags the game. The game would now be seen as an unauthorized copy of Sonic 1, but you can use the noteboard files while playing the game. If you open the files, Lord X would want to stop it, as you can try multiple times. He will change into words such as I am DOD until closing the game. Chapter 3. The X. The tale it is just your generic EXES store, but it takes place on the classic Sonic DS collection game. It starts with the player playing Sonic 2 and Knuckles. The player is just normal playing Emerald Kill Zone, and around the end of Act 1, you see a Sonic sprite from Sonic 1. You know it shouldn't belong there, cause you know, it's Sonic 2 and Knuckles. The player is confused, but decides to jump on Sonic 1, the in-game emulation crashes, and reopens the game, but it doesn't play the intro or anything. This time you spawn in a labyrinth zone like area as Knuckles, strange still, and the player heads forward. After the little ding ding SFX plays a few times, the drowning jingle starts playing while you keep going forward. You can see Sonic behind Knuckles doing supersonic-esque gliding animation, but with the Sonic 1 color palette, and he comes closer and closer. While this is happening, you can see Knuckles actually panicking for air, and for his life, but he can't run fast because he's, well, underwater. On the last note of the drowning jingle, Knuckles dies like he normal would in-game, but there is an awful long silence. Then it crashes again, but opens up with a trident Tails in Angel Island Act 2, but it has only just forest, no obstacles, except this large grassy wall on the right of Tails. Everything is noticeably darker in tone too, but you can see Sonic, looking taller and using less colors from this Sonic 1 palette walking towards Tails. He seems like a second control is playing him, even though that should be impossible. He starts to get impatient with Tails running away, and Sonic starts to dash for Tails. The player does a well-timed spin dash jump, and is able to get a good speed to outrun Sonic. But the escape attempt only makes him more irritated. He decides to try flying away from him, but he can see Sonic can also fly fast. Sonic knocks Tails down to the floor, and Tails can only crawl now. Sonic, seeing this opportunity, takes a spike sprite and impales Tails with it, killing him. Tails doesn't do the normal death animation, he just stays on the ground with a spike in his chest. Eggman saw what happened to Knuckles and Tails, and Eggman tried run but teleported out of nowhere, and the X killed Eggman by ripping his head off his body sausage. Chapter 4. Fatal Error. The tale Fatal store begins with a computer AI known as Iris, created to one of the most human-like AIs in existence. Her creator had spent hundreds of hours on her, and she was perfect, with a personality, human-like mind, and even feelings. It was the best AI in existence. Until her creator had noticed she was getting curious, Iris was exploring around his PC and was doing things questionable to what she was built for, and eventually started crossing the line without even knowing it. This caused her creator to try and pull the plug to get her deleted, but she kept resisting. As she was torn apart by the deletion, her code broke, she glitched and broke immense. In her creator's rash actions, he had done something worse than keep her active. She was now corrupt, and with even more power. Once realizing what her creator had done, she took full control of his PC, not allowing him to do anything. After a full year of tormenting her creator, he couldn't take it anymore, and took his own life, leaving Iris with full control. Time had passed, and Iris now dubbed herself Bebelprime, and started hungering for more code, so she created a series of copies, simply known as Fable copies, to go out into other people's PCs and gather code to bring back and feed her. They were her puppets, and she kept feeding Habil. Until one day Bebelprime was in the middle of producing another Fable cop when something went wrong. The cop was resisting, pulling off more code from Bebelprime than it should, and came out a lot more mangled. This cop she was disgusted by, and thus named it Fable. With Fable error now being created, he was a lot more sentient than the rest of the Fable copies. He began to question what the purpose of his creation was, and why he felt so different. All he knew was that looking at Bebelprime sickened him to his core, and he wanted nothing more than to see her grovel in weakness and pain. After a while, Fable was sent out to gather code, but Bebelprime made sure he wouldn't come back, not like Fable would want to. Fable ever found himself in a random person's PC, and the first file that caught his attention was a Sonic 3 and Knuckles ROM. He was going to just consume the code and be done with it, but a spark arose in his mind. He was going to have a bit of his own fun, thus entered the game and beginning to corrupt all the inhabitants of the game. He started with Sonic, chasing him through launch base, getting his blood racing, and when capturing him, tore off his arms and entered his torso, and Fable thus used Sonic's body as a vessel, corrupting it into Fable-era Sonic. Of course, the rest followed. Tails, Knuckles, Eggman, and even Mech Sonic were no match for Fable-era's corruption, and they were given a fate worse than death. Fable turned them into code puppets, and now controls them like a marionette. The only thing they are able to do is whisper for help. After capturing all four of the puppets, the remnants of Sonic's code, still within the vessel of Sonic, walked through the hall of corrupted memories. He was forced to watch Fable execute, and he hoped there would be a way to fight against him, but it all seemed fruitless. Fable would appear before Sonic, offering him a chance to fight him and amuse him enough to make him consider giving back his body, but Sonic didn't like what he had to do. Fable forced him to fight through his friends. He was forced to fight the code puppets of whom he recognized, but he still did it. Finally, he thought he had won, but Fable tore the last code from him. He wasn't going to give back his body, and thus thrusted Sonic to the deepest part of his body, and he would never have a chance to regain control. Fable ever stood in the mangled remains of the world he had corrupted. He felt power he never expected, and he came to a realization. He didn't need Prime or anything else, he would only need his own power. He has the capability to be stronger than them all, and thus, he cut his strings from Prime and went on his own way. He left the mangled world he had created with his puppets and Sonic form in tow, and thus went to corrupt more out there. Eventually, he finds out there are others like him, the other EXES, and he realized what he could become. He then had a plan set in motion. He has a new goal, one bigger than Bebelprime's. Chapter 4. Sarah. While not much is known about Sarah's life, but she was born around the late 1930s to mid-1940s. At some point she began attending college with three of her friends, Michael, Marvin and Lover, and was also in a relationship with a woman named Lil. However, the group would often argue and fall out at times, as well as get drunk and argue at parties. At some point in 1963, Sarah and her girlfriend Lil were invited to a party, and she went to Lover to recruit him as there'd be a lot of people she wouldn't be familiar with and wanted Lover to be there in case anything went wrong, due to Sarah and Lil being a same-sex couple in the 1960s when that was generally frowned upon. Lover agreed to go and brought along Michael and Marvin. However, during the party, the group got drunk and got into a physical altercation, resulting in someone accidentally killing Sarah by accident, like by smashing some kind of object over her head. The group, in their panic, moved Sarah's body from the location and tossed it in a nearby lake, promising to never speak about the incident again and take the score to their graves. Eventually, Sarah was registered as a missing person, with flyers being plastered around town as her friends, family and girlfriend looked for her. Soon after dying, Sarah woke up in what appeared to be a black void, confused on where she was until all the memories of the previous night came flooding back. Although she felt betrayed by her friends not helping, she came to believe they would remember her before eventually losing hope and believing they hated her. Declaring revenge against them, Sarah swore that if she couldn't go home, neither would they, nor spend decades waiting in limbo for her to gain some form of access to the mortal realm once again. At some point, the video game company said constructed one of their buildings over the lake where Sarah's corpse was buried. Sarah was eventually able to find her way into the cove and took on the form of the company's mascot, Sonic the Hedgehog. Although she was one step closer to completing her plan, she was still tormented by memories of the night she was murdered, feeling how it felt to kill over and over again. At some point, Sarah made contact with an unknown entity who influenced her hatred and motivated her to continue with her plan, as well as presumably bestowing her supernatural powers. To continue. I hope you enjoyed my stories of the EXES. I will be back to show you more stories for the EXES.